Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this panel on open access and policies and initiatives that are needed or are in place to promote open access goals. I'm very pleased to welcome our two panelists with us today. We have with us Dr. Sridhar Gutam. Dr. Gutam is at the Indian Institute of Indian Council of Agricultural Research, specifically at the Institute of Horticultural Research based in Bengaluru. Dr. Gutam is representing two communities for us today. One is that he is a working scientist in India and he's directly impacted by policies and initiatives in open access, but he's also a convener for Open Access India. So he is someone who is actively working on promoting open access amongst researchers and the other stakeholders in the environment of open access in India. So we're looking forward to hearing from you today, Dr. Gutam. We also have with us Dr. Angela Holzer from DFK. She's the Program Director for Scientific Services and Information Systems at DFK, and she's responsible for funding and strategy in the domain of scientific publishing and open access. So she's representing really the funders who are a crucial part of the puzzle, because anyone who works in science knows that the funders really do, to a large extent, define how science is done and what science addresses. So welcome to both the panelists today. Thank you very much for being with us today. Now, just before we start, I'd like to try to set a lay of the land to say that open access is really one part of the whole that is open science. So open science does include scientific publishing and the idea of scientific publishing being open to readers and authors, but also includes other things like open data, data being a first-class output of scientific activity, open software, open hardware, and openness of science to different kinds of stakeholders. So I believe you've all just had a session on citizen science, and that also very well fits in with how we keep science open for it to be serving as a global public good. But today we focus on open access, which is really one of the major parts of this whole. So I'd like to begin with asking our panelists what they would define, how they would define open access in their own words. But before we go into that, I should probably also introduce myself. My name is Megha. I work at the International Scientific Council. International Science Council is based in Paris. We are a small secretariat, but our real membership is in over 140 countries. We represent both natural and social sciences, and our membership comprises of scientific unions, but also of national and regional scientific bodies like councils, academies, and also learned societies. So open science is a really big part of what we do, because our mission is to be the global voice for science, and our vision really is to promote science as a global public good. So as you can imagine, this is a very important topic to our members and a big part of what we do at the ISC. All right, I'll start with Dr. Gutam and then go on to Angela for them to tell us what we're really talking about when we talk about open access today.
Thank you, Megha. And when you ask me what is open access, I should define that it is opening up of the access to what I create. If it is funded to the public funds, and I am answerable to the public, and whatever I do, it should be publicly available. So how it is made publicly available is like how that's a base. So the concept for me, open access, is like it should come from my side. It should start from me, and I should open it up. And then my institution comes, my other things comes into the picture. But like when I want to open, I should open it. So why I should open is because it's, as I say, it's public funded, and it's not only the funding matters, but when I open it up, I will have the more collaborations I can get it. Why? Because it's open and anybody can access it at their will and wish, can pose me questions, interact, and then that's how we will. So it's open access starts with me, and it is the part of the open science. Thank you.
Angela?
Yes, I think I have a similar answer, really. I mean, open access, as you said, both. I think it's one major part of open science. Basically, I mean, it means reading and using research results at any time, any location, without any barriers in the digital context. So I always think of open access as the fulfillment of the digital transformation, using the possibilities that we have in the digital context, and using research. I mean, it's also participation, because then research results can be used by all parts of society, foremost, of course, other scientists, to in a faster fashion to build upon and to have a broad sense of what is being published. And in that sense, I think it's a very crucial element of our future science system.
Thank you very much. I think you both raised similar but actually very different points regarding where the onus lies. What I propose to do now is to start with Dr. Gutam, hear what he has to say about how scientists can open up science in their own practice. We'll then take a few immediate questions, and then we'll go on to Dr. Holzer. We do the same with her, and then we'll open up the floor to participants. So I encourage participants to please submit your questions through the platform so that I can pose these to our panelists. All right, Dr. Gutam, over to you.
Yeah, as I said, like it should start with me, and like there are ways and means already being available. Like if you see the web is the internet, like the way we write, read, learn, contribute, and then get access to whatever you want. So that is one stop portal. So you start contributing to that. Like when I say that I have made a manuscript from my research, so I submit a journal and it gets published. So there the problem is, like once I submit a journal, some journals make it available at the immediately or delayed or at a subscription rate. So again, there are other rights tagged to that, because it asks you to give away the rights to them, and then you sign it off because of various reasons, and then it will be with their custody. Except for the moral rights, we cannot have anything. But as we see, like how the how it is evolving, we see like as a stats from the Sherpa Romeo, which is a copyright repository of the journal policies. They mentioned some time back, I didn't see now, but they say that the 83% of their journals allow some kind of archiving. So let's use this. Let's start with making it the first drafts of your articles, maybe the preprints or the data which you generate and the data which you have published already through the publications, make it available in a data repository so that a person who is working on some algorithm, other things like maybe software or looking for some data feed can use it. So there, and then the copyrights, when we are not giving away. So before you give, you tag it with some license, so that will be available and people will use it as per the license in terms you have given. And we should like understand that only what we have created should not blindly given to somebody who appropriates all your rights, misappropriate I should say, for their own benefit. So you should keep some rights for you. You should use addendums which already been talked about by the various communities, wherein it's all negotiations. When you're transferring anything to a journal, you should put your comments also, your negotiating terms also into that document, and then make it like, okay, because my institution wants my papers to be available in my repository, so I should make a copy of it available. Or it should be because my research is more towards a public good and it's all about education, so I should be permitted to use, and somebody should also use it. So that kind of licensing thing would be there, but mostly our researchers doesn't understand why, because they're not trained into this. So the communities has to take a role, and the institutions have to build some kind of a environment where how a scientist can open up their creations of the research at least into the public, so that public gets benefited. So enabling environment, investing in the infrastructure where the open source you are talking about softwares, everything is available today. In Bangalore, we have relaunched our India archive preprint repository. So this preprint repository will be the one-stop portal for the early works to be accessed by the researcher. So we should take a benefit of these kind of infrastructures being built by the communities or the institutions or the funders or the other communities. Park your works and then make it available and then license it. Before, otherwise, what will happen? Like everybody has to talk to you and write to you that can I use this? Can I use it? Before somebody asks, let's we license it on in terms what we want. So at least not very restrictive, but open licensing kind of things. So that will be reused and built upon. Anyway, see what we want is a citation, and nobody is going to steal our things because knowledge cannot be taken away. It only builds up and multiplies. So already when you date stamp your work and your names are being fixed to it. So I don't think we should feel that something will happen if I open up and if I submit to an open access journal and everybody can copy easy. If you are submitting a subscribed journal, it will not be copied. This misconception needs to be clarified by the supervisors or the librarians or other communities.
Thank you very much. So we already have a question, and I think this is something that you're going to get from several young researchers. This question is from Nilakshi Joshi, and she says, as a young researcher, I'm always in a dilemma. If I publish in high impact journals, I don't always get the money to pay for open access fee. If I go for an open access journal, I still need some money, even though it is much less, but might have a lower impact. Could the panelists please speak about how young researchers with limited funding could publish open access? So this is really related to the question also if scientists and researchers are evaluated based on not just how many publications, but where they publish. What is the incentive they have to publish in open access?
I'll take it. Before panel, I was also talking to my friend who was asking, should I go for this journal platform or that journal platform? And he's saying that I'm negotiating with those journals, like how they can waive off or reduce the APCs. So particularly for the Indian researchers, the young scientists or the young researchers who would like to create an impact by publishing in a so-called high impact factor journals, because that is the only criteria which many of the countries, including India, is looking at it. So if you submit a paper to a high impact journal and say that that is 10 impact factor or 9 impact factor, whatever like this, so you will be regarded as people look at with high esteem. And if you are not publishing in that and you are publishing to a normal society journal or a journal which doesn't have impact factor at all, they will not consider it like you have done a very good work. So the way you are publishing is mattering. When that is mattering, and when you don't have funds to pay for the article processing charges, it's like a very terrible situation. And I've seen like people are putting their own hard-earned money, maybe the fellowships or their own salaries, to pay for a article processing, only to show that like I'm also equivalent to the other researchers who has published, who has the access to the funding for the publications. Not all will have. So then see, this has to be changed. The research assessment has to be changed, and there is already one dialogue happening in India and also everywhere, Latin American countries also, that research assessment is now evolving, and the DORA declaration which we see now does say that you should not use the journal impact factor, but again somehow it is creeping into our national frameworks where you're assessed upon the where you are publishing, and there are incentives to publish in a for some institutions. When you get a paper published in a high impact factor journal, not an impact journal, impact factor journal, you will be rewarded with some cash incentives. So that is also there. That is only to make their rankings. I say that I may be wrong, but only to increase the ranking in the institutional ranking frameworks. So that should not be same. So the policy has to come into picture where the normalization should happen, and everybody has an equal right to publish anywhere they wish. You should not dictate where they should publish. It is the author's prerogative where to publish. But again, others needs to understand that if you publish in a platform, if it is not open, how you will make it open? Either you start with a preprint or postprint, or a summary of your article after posting it, after it get published and it is there. So you can share those kind of activities. But here, this article processing charges is still a big question. I don't have any answer like for those. But unless we change our system, this system where all the stakeholders come into the platform and say table and then discuss how this can be addressed. But as of now, this is a situation we are in process.
So thank you, because you mentioned some solutions, which is that even if you do publish in a journal that's behind paywalls, you can still publish your data, you can still have preprints, you can still have summaries of your articles in a more open access format. So those are some ways you could go, but that doesn't solve the question of how to pay for article processing fees, especially if your institute is not one that is well funded, if your project is one that doesn't attract the kind of trendy funding that may be available to some other projects. So really, there is a more fundamental issue here. We move on to Dr. Holzer to hear really about the funding perspective on the issue, and then we'll try to open up further. So please do submit your questions both for Dr. Holzer, but also if you have further questions for Dr. Gutam, go ahead and submit those. Dr. Holzer.
Well, yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to speak here with you today. I would like to speak a little bit about the role of funders in the open access domain, but also maybe look at current developments and activities. I very much support and emphasize Dr. Gutam's position and viewpoint that the researchers really are the drivers of open access and open science. And for us as a funder, this is true in multiple ways. I mean, we are an organization or a funder that is basically a self-governing organization for science and research. So for all branches of science and humanities, and our Senate consists of researchers. So ultimately the decisions also on policy development and on strategies are taken by researchers themselves. And they, of course, then take also current necessities and developments into account. And this is, so I think there are at least 4 different fields in which funders need to be active to support open access. On the one hand, policy development, so what do we ask from the grantees, but then also funding itself, which was part of the questions raised already. I mean, who pays for the APCs or for BPCs or for any type of sums that will have to be paid in order to publish in open access. And the third area would be evaluation, because funders, I mean, they evaluate proposals, they evaluate projects, they evaluate people basically, and I think there's also a very important arena which needs to see adaptations. Also one point raised already, and we also support, for example, the DORA declaration as a funder, in which is being said that the intrinsic merit of the work has to be considered, not the publishing venue, that is the journal, or any other externalized metrics that in the context of a publication. So this has been, even before we signed DORA, has been very much the leading, the guidelines or the orientation of our also reviewers, to really look at what is being written, not look at where it is being published. And I think this has to hold true and to maybe be emphasized even more also in the future. And then automatically the publishing venue becomes less important, because it's really about, can I access the results, and can reviewers access the results? Can they look at the data? Can they come to a conclusion on the content? And then it is really not, should not be the major consideration where things are being made available, but rather how and with what context and with what quality assurance mechanisms and so on and so forth. And then I think the fourth area would really be to look at the developments closely, to monitor the developments, to see what kind of policy effects arise. For example, when giving out funds for APCs, will this have as a consequence that the prices become even more expensive? This would be detrimental, certainly something we do not intend as funders. And this would be the fourth area, I think, where we need to be active. And then, of course, we do not only fund projects or research itself, but we also fund infrastructures. And I think this is also a very important perspective for funders, even more now also to look at it from an international point of view, which sometimes is difficult because of restricted possibilities to fund international infrastructures. But I think we need to look at how to make such a thing possible. But to basically support discipline-specific infrastructures, to support repositories, to support publication platforms that are being operated by scientific communities or that are being operated by scientific institutions themselves. So I think this is also a very important field, and we do have dedicated funding programs, for example, for journals that are being operated at universities or for any other infrastructures in the vein of the so-called diamond open access model. And also the green open access route, we have very actively engaged in funding it like 20 years ago already. So we have a very good, I think globally, a very good network of repositories that also now increasingly function as locations for first publications, that is for immediate open access publications, not just for secondary publications. But then again, the question is really relevant. I mean, if there are so many opportunities to publish in open access, why do some researchers not use them or take them up? And I think that is really then, it has to do with the evaluation criteria that are still dominantly in place and that we touched upon earlier, namely the reputation of a journal or any such things, and therefore I totally agree that it is of importance to look at this area and what can be accomplished here. And then also regarding preprints, I think for the purpose of open access, namely to make knowledge available, preprints are a very good format as well. So we also accept the for example, I mean, these are smaller things, but I think important things. We accept that preprints are being mentioned in CVs or in proposals as a contribution to science, and I think, I mean, looking at the notion of quality assurance, it becomes always more important in the digital context with the proliferation of a variety of publication venues. And then I think if the publication really carries markers to say it has been reviewed, it has not yet been peer reviewed, then everything is fine. I mean, it just needs to be clear, I think, to the audience, to the people who read scientific or research publications, what the status of a publication is in order to be able to interpret its validity and its design. And so we think it is also really a very important task of the researchers themselves to select the appropriate venues. It does not, again, not have to be a highly renowned journal. It just has to be a venue that really is both on the part of technical quality assurance and the procedures that lead to the publication follows good publication practice, and also makes clear what type of review procedures are being followed. And then of course new peer review methods like community peer review after publication also have their place in the scientific discourse, and we do not have to just and solely rely on peer review before publication. So I think there's a variety of publication venues to be used for open access, and also the acceptance of funders that these can be used and are being regarded in similar terms during evaluation procedures. I think this is a very important message and needs to be reinforced internationally, as research is international and the competition is international as well. Well, and I think then there is as Mr. Gutam also said, like there are principles that need to be followed, like good metadata to the publication that can be interpreted, like fair principles that also apply to research data, and basically the quality standards should be consistently upheld, but we have to broaden our notion of what that means, can mean in the digital sense and in an open science context. Basically, I mean, I think we already touched upon the issue of that it is really important that research assessment takes into account a variety of contributions, not only publications, not only different types of publications and not only publications, but also contributions to software development, for example, contributions to making research data available. And I think it is a long process to adapt the evaluation procedures to the practices, but both has to go hand in hand. Otherwise, I guess we cannot make real progress in the sense that we instigate open science as a very fundamental aspect of scientific practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was quite a broad and useful vision of how funders look at the issue. An immediate question for you. Have we lost Dr. Holzer? I don't see her on the screen anymore.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Oh, here you are. Okay. An immediate question for you would be, you spoke a lot about evaluation and quality assurance, and I'm wondering if at DFG you've had to adjust your evaluation, both for how you grant funding, but also how you measure impact of your funding, and whether this adjustment, if you had to do any, was difficult, needed a lot of investment and time, is it working well, and if you have lessons to share for other stakeholders and funders.
We constantly try to adapt evaluation procedures. About 10 years ago, there was or even 11 years ago, there was an initiative called Quality Before Quantity. And in the vein of this, we asked applicants to not list all of their publications in their proposals, in their CVs, but only the 5 most important publications. So fewer, but the ones that they considered most important to their application or to their research career. And this has been, I think, a very important signal, also very important step. But then again, I mean, we continuously watch and see, of course, that there is limited effect in that sense that it cannot be done only by one agency. I think many have to do it together in order to create an effect, because of course still outside of the context of the funder, peer researchers look at the metrics, and they look maybe at the age index and look at other indices. But still, I mean, I think this was one important signal. And now the next step, as I said, is to make sure that also not peer-reviewed publications can be mentioned in applications if they are declared as such, And then a further step would be to broaden the kind of contributions that can be mentioned in applications and in CVs. And this is it has been a longer process, but we are very optimistic that this is also something that needs to be accomplished.
And if you do broaden the kind of input that's or output that's submissible, how do you intend to make sure that quality assurance is not lowered?
Yes, we then would suggest a number of criteria that the publication venues have to follow. For example, if data sets are mentioned, then they have to be made available via specific infrastructures that follow or that adhere to the FAIR data criteria. If publications are being mentioned, they would have to, for example, clearly distribute their status so that it can be easily detected in what version it is, under which conditions it has been published, and also regarding technical aspects of the quality assurance, certain standards like this would be or will be made available to for consideration. Or as orientation, maybe that would be better to say as orientation. And then the quality of the content, I mean, this is really part of the scientific discourse to assess the quality of the content and to peers.
Understood. So I have a question here from George Thomas. He has a question for each of you. So perhaps I'd start with the question for Sridhar. The question is, how is India, with its One Nation, One subscription plan, supporting open access?
It is not supporting the open access, it is supporting the access. Like we have many consortia in India. The IITs will have a different consortia, IIMs and everything, but they are now going to integrate all the consortia together, maybe one-stop portal. Now we can see from the InfibNet, the members of those InfibNet get the access to the e-resources. Likewise, maybe other consortia they are coming. So basically, the intention is to bring all those consortia together and make a collective bargain with the publishers to get the access to those journals which they were doing it individually, or it's a duplication. So there still it is in policy and it's a draft. It is still not published in the sense like to be implemented. So there are already some discussions happening, but I see that it may not be possible because how many journals you would like to subscribe to that? So, and I said like it has an author's prerogative to publish at any platform or any journal, and so only making available some set of journals may not be feasible. Like I see it is like you can club everything, but again the access to those journals still always will be limited. We have to see once it is implemented, but it is not going to support the open access, but it may support the access to those journal articles which we were behind the paywall.
But they'll still be behind paywalls. It's just that they will be behind a collective paywall instead of individualized ones for institutions. Dr. Holzer, your question from George Thomas is on the German context, and he's asking you, isn't the German big deal transformative agreement simply supporting big publishers to be excused from immediate full OA publishing without a deadline?
The big deals, or the deal project in Germany that has negotiated with the large publishers Springer Nature and Wiley, and has concluded transformative agreements with both publishers. I wouldn't say that the point of the agreements is that the publications from German researchers are made available in open access with the CC licensing immediately. So it is an open access agreement in that sense, and it doesn't support the publishers more or less than if it would have been, closed payments for closed content. But we do think that we, by the collective payment that has gone to the publishers in the past, we now achieve more for the same money, namely to have the German publications in open access with the CC licensing.
So there are quite parallels between the one nation, one subscription and this particular deal, although not exactly the same, but the idea is to leverage some bargaining power from the users of these publications that's already been established. I encourage participants to please send in your questions. We're going to open up the platform now and hopefully keep it quite interactive. In the meanwhile, Sridhar, if you could tell us a little more about Open Access India. I think some people might be interested in learning more about your activities and your mission.
Yeah, it's a community of practice. It doesn't have any office or it doesn't look it, but only thing is just to have some kind of a tag. We tag it where with a Bangalore, but it is open online and anybody can be a part of it. What basically do is we will learn things from what is happening. Maybe the Planus is there, Plan A is there, what is Diamond Access, Diamond Journal, Open Access Journals, or what are the softwares available for a society to launch a journal, to transform it into a journal, and how the new metrics can be used, where should be the indexed, where so that it gets easily available by the harvesters. So, and then how to make a different formats. Now I see there's America initiative from the Latin American. It is supported by the UNESCO, and we are working with them to learn and get trained ourselves, and so that we will train the others how to use that software to make different versions of your paper. Versions mean the readable versions. It can be a PDF, it can be HTML, XML, or whatever formats. So these things we are doing this and trying to learn from each other, talk to each other, and all these pieces are happening. And we also started, we give one declaration on open access, Delhi Declaration on Open Access. Many people have signed up. It is only to make aware people like, see, these are the things that are done. And that also follow, we also made one open access national policy draft, looking at the other nations' policies. So we have made it, and these are all resources are available on our website, openaccessindia.org. And that not only we are doing the advocacy, but we also work in the infrastructure development, not by ourselves, but if somebody is giving it, we will try to adopt and use it. Like when the Center for Open Science was giving the hosting support for the preprints, we started our Agri archive. And now, then also we started the India archive. So that kind of things. And here, today I was saying that one society has come forward to host our India archive, and then software is there, public PKPs, open preprint systems. So we learn how to install, and we install in our server, and then we will like say to the people that if they want to install there, we will help them. Like this, we are building ourselves. The community is being built by ourselves and getting strong, learning things, and then making one opinion on a policy. And whenever there is some kind of a discussions happen, we actively participate. We were part of the STIP draft process, in the sense we were actively participating in those consultations. It was very good process has happened, and all of our members were part of those kind of activities happening anywhere. So we join the UNESCO's discourses. We share all these things as a advocacy part.
So if one of our participants today wants to join your efforts, could you tell us why they should want to join and how they can join if they do want to join?
There is some small sign up so that we can capture their details, email, so that we can put up into the mailing list. Otherwise, unfortunately, we are on a closed group in the sense of Facebook. It's not closed, but Facebook is not open. So whosoever on Facebook only can be part of it. But we are, that's why we are on a different platforms. We are on the social media networks. We have the mailing list. And because as I said, there is no membership fees, there is no hierarchy, but we have one core group, kind of a steering committees, wherein people from different walks, the researchers, librarians, or professors are on the part of it, so that anywhere if they want to intervene, they can intervene. So we would like to be in touch with them. So that's how this group has formed. Can sign up from our website. We have the links to join us. And why they should join is, one is to learn what is happening and how they can contribute. Suppose I was looking for a person who can install this OJ softwares or preprint softwares, because I'm not from a IT background. But when people have joined us, they are from the IT and they have become a core group of us, and they are helping in the installations. So even the remote installations, the free software guys who are well versed, because open science is only possible with the open infrastructure software. So they are well versed with that, and they are helping us, this community, to do whatever they want as for the open science.
Thank you. And Dr. Holzer, talking about the funders again, what could help funders push the envelope on promoting open access? Would it be collaborations with other funders? Would that be at national or regional levels, or more broadly on policy issues? But what is it that could help break the few barriers that you've mentioned on pushing open access?
Well, that's a very good and interesting question. I mean, I think it is really it's the domain of how researchers are being assessed. I think this is one of the issues that can only be addressed across different countries and different research areas and systems. And I think it is the will of the researchers. I mean, their practice. If they adopt it, I'm often funders also follow. It's not only that we try to standardize. Of course we try to make policies, but we cannot sensibly do this against the practice of researchers. So I think this is one of the crucial things, that the practice is really changing, and I see that happening. I see that happening currently.
So both of you seem to suggest that it is the researchers themselves upon whom the onus lies to transform the system, or at least the institutions of these researchers that evaluate them. So if I were a young researcher getting acquainted with the issues at hand, Dr. Gutam, perhaps you could talk about what are the key barriers in someone really making that switch from thinking only in traditional publishing terms to starting to think about open access and how they can implement it in their own work.
I was always, I was from the starting of this panel discussion, we were talking about the various avenues. As a young researcher, because they don't know, it is again the seniors need to guide them, but seniors are in the traditional way of publications. So they are only say don't publish in open access journals, because one question we have asked a senior professor, he says, I don't want to suggest people to go for the open access, they should only publish in peer-reviewed publications. But those peer-reviewed publications are again closed access and are only subscription-based one, and they are traditional, they are not online also. And because they see a printed publication is more good thing to see than the digital version. And there is again one discouraging that all open access journals are not are of poor quality. That cannot be assessed for any of your future assessments. So you will not be they will not encourage. But again, as the people are aware of what is happening around with the people will be able to access something. Maybe the librarians might have done some workshops, or the research might attended some online courses on research methodology, all these things or something there. These mentions were there. And UGC has mandated to have 2 courses on the research ethics and publications. So there the content should be more evolved, built for the openness. So they are only talking about how to publish, but ethics and publication, but why people have to open it up, that is missing, and more stress has to be done. The young researchers, when they are doing the research, because they think that because I'm putting a lot of effort in making the research output, if somebody misappropriate my outputs and then take the credit. So what are the trust? I mean, there should be some trust building. That has to be again the enabling environment where their labs or the institution has to create that. Say you are safe when you are open. So that kind of a things should be there, and it is evolving. And I'm seeing the bioarchive is being populated with the young researchers only, and they're fighting with their supervisors that no, allow me to publish in the bioarchive as a preprint repository so that I can take the credit of my work prior to anybody. So priority setting they are doing. That's what I came to learn, know with some young researchers when I was interacting in Delhi during the Delhi Declaration on Open Access. So it's like this Open Access India is there, and let's join the young researchers. Let's change the world what we want towards the open knowledge society.
That's quite inspiring. Dr. Holzer, are there any upcoming initiatives or policy developments that are exciting in the field of open access that we should know about?
I think one issue that is really of importance here in the discussions is the question of governance. I mean, who owns the research, the infrastructures, the publication infrastructures, data infrastructures, software? Will it be research institutions? Will it be commercial actors in the field? And I think one of the initiatives that we see as very important in the German context, for example, with research data, is that it is we build a national research data infrastructure, meaning that it is scientific institutions and consortia that get funding to organize the way research data is being managed, is being collected, is being shared. So I think this is one important development regarding the questions of ownership and of governance, also not only regarding the future ways that research output can be accessed and used, but also regarding secondary effects like will the access be monetized, and so on and so forth, and what kind of super services will be built upon the research outputs. And I think if that's if these are developed or organized by scientific institutions, it's certainly much in the interest also of research, because then it's often more transparent what kind of services are being built upon.
I think that's quite an important point. At the IC, we have been campaigning to push the principle that research infrastructure and research output should be owned by the scientific community and not by any commercial enterprise. And that's one of the key principles we have in one of our publications that came out last year called Opening the Record of Science, Making Scientific Publishing Work for the 21st Century, where we draw out 8 principles on which we would like the science system to move. I'll give you now a chance for any closing comments, Dr. Gutam, and then Dr. Holzer.
Yeah, the Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2020, which is still at the draft, it talks about the establishment of a institutional, let's say, Indian institutional repository kind of which through which data and information can be accessed. But it has to should also talk about the open metrics or the assessment, because that will be the more guiding force, or the people will that will encourage people to submit their things into that repositories, because we have seen there are mandates, but repositories are not being filled up. So there is no incentive. So incentive part has to become up, and when they contribute, they will be recognized with some kind of a stars or whatever, like leaderboards or something like that, to have some competition. And infrastructure, not only at the national level, the institutions, the universities should also build up. Like we have a thesis repository called Shodh Ganga, but there is no repository for putting their publications into the repositories. I don't know why the policy is only taking about the thesis, not for the institutional publications or the research publications or the journal publications. So, and then we have a data repository, government data repository. As German has a national research data repository, we should also have it. I hope this what the repository which we are talking of, the STIP is talking, will have a space for depositing our data and getting a DOI for that, so that that can be cited in our publications or in any books or anywhere. So we are waiting for those policy to be implemented and see how the infrastructure will help us to open ourselves, and the researchers will come forward to open their outputs for the public to use and reuse, build upon, not only for the research publication, but for the educational resources. So we don't have a open educational resources repository as of now, but there was an effort for the NCRTs to put up, and I see there is a one small initiative by the InflibNet. Again, I'm saying InflibNet. They have started that people can contribute their educational works into those repositories, but it is not being taken by all the schools or the institutions. It is not being filled up, but it should be more campaigning should be done as we celebrate our Open Access Week, National Science Week. Now we are celebrating. During this discourse, we should talk about like how education resources or the science resources can be made openly available.
Is there a timeline for the policy that you've mentioned?
No, there is no, like December 2020, they have put up as a draft. Still, I don't know what is making them not to bring out as a gazette notification. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so thank you very much for signaling our attention to that. Dr. Holzer, any closing remarks?
Well, I'd just like to thank everyone for the questions and for the discussion here today. I think it was very important to get also insight into what the issues are in different continents across the globe, but I had the impression that we are working towards the same goal internationally, and I think that it's a very, very important insight that I'll take away from our discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to both our panelists. This has been really an interesting discussion, and I wish we had much longer. I'm sure we'll keep in touch and keep this conversation going, but thank you for your time today.